is safe to say that on any given day, driving down Highway 441, you might have seen a man wearing a bright orange beanie and rain boots. Or maybe if you're walking downtown in front of our campus bookstore, you may have seen a man with a salt and pepper beard that has a bicycle sitting on one of the benches. Or, for all of the college students in the room, on that 2 a.m. run to Golden Pantry for that chicken biscuit, you probably have ran into a man named Jay, and he probably has asked you for your change. These are all instances that are all too familiar for many people in this room, and even for those of you that do not live in Milledgeville, I'm positive you know what I'm talking about. Homelessness is a growing epidemic in this great country of ours, and something that is all too visible even in our own communities. With poverty being the highest contributing factor to homelessness, it is alarming to learn from the U.S. Census done in September 2011 that the national poverty rate is 15.1%. That's 46.2 million people. In Georgia alone, nearly 1.7 million people live in poverty. Good evening. My name is Jessica Magnuson, and I would like to talk to you about homelessness, and more specifically, how we as a society communicate with homeless people. The focus of my research is to observe the behaviors and attitudes of society towards homeless people, and to then look at how overall feelings and communication shift through prolonged exposure and experiences with homeless people. I will begin by explaining current views and stereotypes of homeless people and how these form. Then I will tell you of a study done at a Southeastern University that shows how these views can change. And finally, I will get to share with you my own experience of working with homeless people at Milledgeville's local soup kitchen, Cafe Central. In Section 11302 of the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act, homeless is defined as an individual who lacks fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence, or a person who resides in a shelter, welfare hotel, transitional program, or a place not ordinarily used for sleeping accommodations. Even now, with me just bringing up the topic of homelessness, I'm sure each person in this room is thinking of an instance where you came in contact with a homeless person, or maybe just your overall views on the topic. Well, I'm going to start by telling you how many of these views form. There are two theories that I want to look at. One is social exclusion, and the other is uncertainty reduction theory. Homeless people are among the largest socially excluded group in society today. The Adler School of Professional Psychology characterizes social exclusion as a concept that is used to refer to complex processes that deny certain groups access to rights, opportunities, and resources that are key to social integration. So, in other words, individuals and groups of people are pushed to the outskirts of society because of disadvantages. It is often connected with a person's social class, education level, and living standards. The opposite of this, social cohesion, builds on social ties established through economic, political, and civil institutions. If those ties are weakened due to a lack of opportunity of an individual's inability to use them, it makes for an easy path to social exclusion. A very large portion of these groups are made of the homeless and unemployed population. Unemployment has been recognized as one of the key causes of social exclusion. Many people's networks and sense of community revolve around their work, and once that is gone, it's much easier for an unemployed person to be somewhat excommunicated from their community. Another factor that contributes largely to social exclusion is homelessness. To live a normal life requires a home to live in. Not having a home can make it extremely hard to keep a job, which in turn perpetuates poverty, which can lead to an array of other reasons for social exclusion. As a rule, homeless people lack resources, opportunity, and abilities to make use of social institutions. All of these factors make homeless people as a whole shut out from the rest of society, and we start to view them as a social group entirely separate from our own. Because homeless people are such a distinct group in society that is so severely excluded, most people have very little experience-based knowledge of them. This brings me to my next theory of uncertainty reduction. The goal for this theory is to predict and explain how communication is used to reduce the uncertainty among people involved in conversations for the first time. The theory first aims to minimize the uncertainties that humans have about the world and the people within it. Knowing and understanding what kind of person someone is gives information on how you're supposed to interact with them. There are 3 reasons people might try to reduce their uncertainty about someone. First is anticipation of a future interaction. So you're planning on seeing this person again. Secondly, there's an incentive value, or maybe they have something that you want. And finally, deviance, meaning the person acts in a weird way, so you want to understand why. The homeless fit into this category, or into this theory, under 2 categories, the deviance and the anticipation of future interaction. There are essentially 2 types of uncertainty. One type deals with behavioral questions, and the other deals with cognitive questions, or intellectual internal questions. Behavioral questions when coming in contact with a homeless person would include things like if you're walking down the street and you see one, you quickly decide if you are going to touch them or even make eye contact with them. Cognitive questions would include things like when a homeless person asks you for your change. You are going to wonder what they're really going to do with that money in order to determine whether you'll give it to them. Behavioral uncertainties can usually be solved fairly simply by following what is socially acceptable. However, although it might be more difficult, finding answers to cognitive questions does much more in reducing uncertainties about people. Another part of uncertainty reduction theory is attribution theory. This serves as an explanation of how people draw inferences about the characters of others based upon their observed behavior. So when you see someone digging in the trash, based off of that behavior, you might attribute that to them being hungry or under the influence of a certain substance. Therefore, a person will adjust the way they communicate with them based off of those assumptions in order to reduce their uncertainty about them. Communication with homeless people is created largely from stereotypes formed about them. There are undoubtedly a large range of stereotypes given to the homeless population. They are often viewed as male, lazy, dangerous, unemployed, and with no moral conduct. Homelessness is seen mainly as a character flaw instead of a socioeconomic dilemma, so we blame the person rather than the circumstances. Attitudes towards homeless people, however, are largely formed off of their interaction with the most visible members of the group, which tend to be the most severe cases. Nevertheless, in some cases, studies have shown that our communication and behaviors towards homeless people can change through extended exposure and experiences with them. The study I want to tell you about is a study that was done in 2000 by John Hawking and Samuel Lawrence. Hawking and Lawrence suggest that if stereotypes about homeless people come from limited interaction, then maybe an extended amount of time spent with homeless people can foster positive changes in attitudes. So this is what they set out to do. Participants of this study included 131 undergraduate students from a Southeastern university. 19 of those students were a test group, and the other 112 participants created 4 separate control groups. Each group consisted of junior communication majors that were enrolled in different communication classes. And during the 5th, 6th, and 7th weeks of the term, participants in the experimental group were paired to work in a homeless shelter. In my paper, I included more of the inner workings of this experiment, but for the sake of time, I'll only talk about the results. In comparing the pre- and post-test questionnaires, several of Hawking and Lawrence's hypotheses were confirmed. One hypothesis was that shelter workers would exhibit more positive attitudes towards homeless people than control participants. Results showed that shelter workers perceived homeless people as less blameworthy and more attractive than the controls. Shelter workers also viewed homeless people as less dangerous than the control groups, and also more likely to be similar to them. They began to view homeless people as good, intelligent, and just as deserving of sympathy. As a whole, from this experiment, Hawking and Lawrence concluded that volunteers reported higher levels of behavioral commitment towards the homeless, including persuading others to volunteer, feeling a personal responsibility to the homeless, and perceptions of the seriousness of the problem nationally. I would now like to share with you my favorite part of my research, which is my own experience at Cafe Central. This semester, I have been enrolled in Dr. Dillard's service learning class. Early in the semester, we decided that we would try and lessen the hunger problem in Milledgeville. It did not take us long to figure out that the best place that we could contribute our efforts was at Cafe Central. This soup kitchen was opened in October of 2009 and has been feeding Milledgeville residents every Tuesday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. ever since. They have grown from the modest 17 people that came the first Tuesday they were open to now feeding over 400 people every week. On the first day that our class went to Cafe Central, we met and talked with the woman that started the soup kitchen just over 3 years ago. We met with Ann, the fearless leader of Cafe Central. Once Dr. Dillard explained to her what our class would be doing, she did not hesitate a bit in telling us that they needed a lot of help with their preparation for Tuesday meals and also with serving on Tuesdays. She also began telling us about how this was more than just a place for people to get a hot meal. It was really a place for people to come and feel welcomed and loved. She realizes that these people coming are not just hungry for a meal, but they're hungry for human interaction and for someone to listen to them. My first reaction as a rhetoric major was excitement. I love hearing when people realize that others are in simple need of attention and communication with and from other people. On the other hand, I started thinking about how I have never before had a prolonged exposure with homeless people or even people living in moderate to extreme poverty. Although I was looking forward to this experience at my time at Cafe Central, I was also a little apprehensive. If I had to sum up my views and feelings towards homeless people prior to working at Cafe Central, I would say for the most part I was scared and uneasy. And these feelings came straight from my only prior experiences with them. My most vivid memory of a homeless person was a man harassing my dad while we were in Macon when I was in high school. Since then, this event largely shaped my views of homeless people as unpredictable and somewhat dangerous. So this was my attitude going into work there. Because of this, I was a little bit relieved at the way I was kind of eased into the environment at Cafe Central. The first Tuesday I went there, I dried dishes and talked with the people that have been volunteering for a long time there. As we talked, I could feel all my nervousness subsiding, and over the next couple of weeks, it was virtually gone. While working at Cafe Central, through passing out dessert, refilling lemonade and sweet tea, and occasionally playing tag with a toddler, I could feel myself begin to view the people I interacted with as individuals, and not just this mass of homeless and poverty-stricken people that needed a warm meal. One of my favorite moments was one week when I was refilling drinks, and a man stopped me. He is a regular I'd seen many times before there. He held out his hand for me to shake it, and when I did, he wouldn't let go until I made eye contact with him. He waited until I would acknowledge the fact that he was a person just like me, and then went on to thank me and told me I had a nice smile. But for that moment, there was a real connection between this overprivileged 22-year-old college girl and a middle-aged homeless man. I've definitely been changed through my experience there. I've not only become aware of one of the major communication breakdowns in society, but I've also learned that there is value in acknowledging the innate dignity in us all, no matter what our background is. I think that Hawking and Lawrence put it best when saying, when we learn through direct contact and communication that homeless people are not different from us in any fundamental way. They have thoughts, self-esteem, hopes, sadness, and all other human emotions that we have. Our attitudes and behaviors towards these individuals may change. Communication will always reduce our uncertainties about other people and leaving us knowing them and ourselves better. When communication is absent, all we are left to our own casual observations and stereotypical assumptions. What I hope to have done tonight is to show you the ways in which even a simple handshake